It is an honor and responsibility to host this important regional meeting of the Committee of Intelligence and Security Service of Africa. On behalf of the people of Ethiopia and government of Ethiopia, I extend our warmest greetings that your presence here reflects your nation's enduring commitment to peace, to collective security, and to future shaped by cooperation, not conflict. Excellencies, Ethiopia has long stood for solidarity, for regional peace, for a belief that no country can prosper in isolation, while its neighbors are engulfed by insecurity. We have walked this road for generations, defending sovereignty, contributing to peacekeeping, and supporting African-led solutions for African challenges. As how to the African Union and home to many continental institutions, Ethiopia remains firm in one belief, that lasting peace can only be achieved through trust, earned, shared, and sustained. The vision set forth in Agenda 2063 and the Silencing the Guns initiative is clear. A peaceful Africa, a stable East Africa, a region where opportunity flourishes because conflict does not. But vision alone is not enough. It must be met with courage, cooperation, and clarity of purpose. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our region faces a difficult truth. Violence continues to erupt. Crime spills across borders. Armed groups exploit divisions. From kidnapping for ransom to looting of resources, we are witnessing a form of organized violence that profits from chaos and instability. But these are not natural disasters. They are man-made, and too often they are fueled from within. Let us be candid. One of the greatest threats to regional peace is the support, whether direct or covert, given by one state to armed groups operating in another. We have seen this, we have documented it, we know the consequences. These proxy conflicts are corrosive. They inflame old grievances. They hollow out institutions. They make diplomacy harder and peace more distant. And they do something even more dangerous. They normalize lawlessness. They turn instability into strategy. We must call this out, and we must end it. No country in this region will ever be truly safe if its neighbor is inflamed. But there is another side to this story. We have also seen what is possible when nations choose collaboration over confrontation. Joint operations have disrupted criminal networks. Intelligence sharing has saved lives. Coordinated efforts have proven that we can, in fact, act as one when the stakes are high. We thank the countries who continue to learn to fight terror together, to dismantle smuggling routes, to target the funding channels that sustain violence. The lesson is clear. We are strongest when we stand together. Excellencies, if we are to build a future rooted in peace and dignity, we must commit ourselves to three guiding principles. First, East African nations must take full ownership of their own security. Peace cannot be outsourced. Our challenges are ours to solve, and our solutions must be shaped by those who understand the terrain not from afar, but from within. Second, we must deepen regional cooperation. Platforms like CISA are not just symbolic, they are essential. Intelligence and security services must speak in real time, act in coordination, and build trust that goes beyond protocol. Third, we must invest in our institutions. Modern threats require modern tools. Our security service must be well-trained, well-equipped, and rooted in the values of professionalism and accountability. That is how we earn the public's trust and each other's. Ladies and gentlemen, security is not just the absence of war. It is the presence of justice. It is a protection of dignity. It is a foundation upon which we build jobs, educate our children, and dream beyond survival. Let this gathering in Addis Ababa be a turning point, a place where honesty meets resolve, where we name the challenges and commit to face them together. Let it be said that from this meeting came not just speeches, but solutions. Not just declarations, but actions. Ethiopia always stands ready. We will work with our neighbors. We will defend what is right, and we will work relentlessly for a region that is safer, stronger, and more united than ever before. With that, I declare the East African Regional Meeting of CISA officially open. Thank you.
First of all, it is a great honor to stand before you today at this esteemed Committee of Intelligence and Security Service of Africa, CISA, East African Regional Meeting. Welcome to your second home, Ethiopia, the land of origin and the diplomatic heart of our continent, Addis Ababa. We convened here, united by a common purpose, to collaborate in ensuring peace, security, prosperity in the eastern part of the African continent, under the theme Enhancing Regional Security Through Intelligence Gathering, which encompasses 13 member countries participating in this August meeting. Over the last decade, East Africa has encountered a multifaceted, evolving security landscape. The region has grappled with political instability, internal disputes, external interventions, escalating threats of organized crime, cyber attacks, transnational terrorism, piracy, and climate-induced conflicts. Our region is undeniably confronting some of the most intricate security challenges in the world. As we all know, these regional threats do not recognize borders, nor do they respect the sovereignty of each state. They are naturally transnational, necessitating a consolidated effort from all CISA member countries. Thus, the importance of cooperation cannot be overstated. We must work together to effectively combat such intricate security threats. We must also join forces and forge ahead effectively to combat such complex security challenges, establishing a united front on cooperation, mutual respect, shared intelligence that fortifies our collective resilience. As leaders and experts in African intelligence and security services, our responsibilities extend beyond merely safeguarding our nations. We must also secure the broader Eastern African region. The era in which nations could insulate themselves from regional security challenges on their own has long passed. We've made commendable strides in such aspect in fostering intelligence cooperation among East African countries. However, much is yet to be desired. Implementing effective intelligence sharing mechanism is essential to preempt potential crises before they escalate. The challenges we encounter in East African region are indeed formidable. However, the path to overcoming these regional issues lies in enhancing multifaceted cooperation among the intelligence services of our member countries and our partners. The CISA regional meeting presents a pivotal opportunity to consolidate our efforts. As a leader of intelligence and security service, I firmly believe that continuous institutional reform within these services is vital for defending against emerging security threats and navigating the volatile geopolitical landscape in the Eastern Africa region. In my institution, the National Intelligence and Security Service, we've been actively implementing institutional reform since 2018 to bolster our professional and technical capabilities on an international scale. These reforms, particularly in technology and human resources, have markedly enhanced efficiency and performance of our service. Furthermore, NIS has signed Memorandum of Understanding with lots of intelligence and security services to strengthen cooperation and partnership in the areas of capacity building and intelligence sharing. These collaborative efforts have been instrumental in mitigating the impact of terrorism, cross-border crimes, illegal arms trafficking, and illicit financial flows and human trafficking. Your Excellency, Temasgen Truna, as we conclude this meeting, I hope that we, as leaders and experts of the East African intelligence and security services, will have established a solid foundation for robust and comprehensive cooperation frameworks and platforms. Through our collective expertise and unwavering commitment, I'm confident that we can achieve significant progress in enhancing our collaborative efforts. In closing, I urge all participants to reaffirm our commitment and to demonstrate effective and collective resolve in shaping the future of East African region. I wish you a fruitful stay. I thank you very much.
I extend my heartfelt appreciation to the National Intelligence and Security Service of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia for hosting this important gathering and for the kind invitation extended to the chairperson of the African Union. This conference, held under the timely and crucial theme, Enhancing Regional Security Through Intelligence Cooperation, comes at a moment when our region, and indeed our continent, is confronted with a myriad of security challenges, from transitional terrorism and cyber threats to political instability and organized crime. These complex dynamics demand not only vigilant but sustained, coordinated, and intelligent responses. In this regard, I commend CISA and its regional mechanisms for their unwavering commitment to strengthening intelligence collaboration and promoting information sharing frameworks that serves our collective peace and security interests. Security is not the concern of one state alone. It is a regional imperative and a global responsibility. The chairperson of the African Union reaffirms the commitment to supporting member states in building robust, cooperative intelligence network. Such collaboration is not only vital to preventing conflict, but is also foundational to our broader goals of integration, development, and continental unity as envisioned in Agenda 2063. Ladies and gentlemen, we must continue to build trust among our institutions, harmonize our strategies, and invest in modernizing our intelligence capacities. Furthermore, we must ensure that our actions respect the right of our citizens, uphold the rule of law, and are grounded in a spirit of transparency and mutual respect. Let's work together in strengthening existing mechanisms. In this regard, I propose that we adopt practical steps to improve our coordination mechanism, such as regular technical exchanges, joint training programs, and integrated early warning systems. Let's also leverage technology and digital platforms to enhance real-time intelligence exchange. Let us also seize this moment to strengthen our resolve, forge stronger ties, and reaffirm our shared commitment to peace, stability, and security and progress across East Africa and beyond. I look forward to the fruitful deliberations ahead and the actionable outcomes that will emerge from this important meeting. And thank you very much.
My topic is on the prospect of cooperation in a complex security dynamics. So I try to argue that we are living in a region where there is a prospect to cooperate. At the same time, we are living in a very complex security dynamic situation. So I would like to start by just saying a few words about the region that we are living. So, yeah, Eastern Africa is a region which is home for more than 500 plus million people, and it's keep on rising with the rapid rate of growth. At the same time, the region is characterized by rapid economic growth and urbanization. So this is, I could say, this is a region which is experiencing frequent changes, both in terms of democracy, in terms of social settlement pattern, in terms of economic growth, and something like that. Again, Eastern Africa region is composed of shared resources like water bodies. We have different rivers and the ocean and the Red Sea. All these are important resources of the region. At the same time, in this region, we find very rich minerals, and there's also petroleum. So when I come back to the economic growth, in the Eastern Africa region, you find few of the highly rapidly growing economies in the world. We can mention of states like Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. These states are rapidly growing in terms of economy. So the economic growth, on the other hand, means it's an opportunity to collaborate together in order to fight poverty. On the other side, it means there is a demand for more energy, there is demand for market integration. So Eastern African states has to think in what way that we can work to integrate our economies, in what way that we can maximize energy supply to the region and something like that. Again, the other very important progress that we are experiencing in Eastern Africa is there is a progress in terms of connectivity. States are now trying to connect themselves through energy grids, railway lines, express roads, airports, maritime ports are being built. This is a good initiative. I think we need to capitalize on this as well. Again, Eastern African states have a huge potential for future growth as well. We have labor force, we have improvement in business environment, we have untapped resources. If you work a lot on this and if we collaborate a lot on this, this can be a huge potential for future growth as well. Again, when we see this region, this is also a region which is composed of diverse types of regional initiatives, like we have IGAD, we have EAC, again we have COMESA, and now the African Continental Free Trade Agreement arrangement is coming, and states are trying to implement this arrangement. So this shows that, again, there is a potential for cooperation. So far, I try to bring into your attention the potential that we have. But we are living also in a very complex situation. So if we are living in this type of complex security dynamics, so the question has to be, so what is the way forward? So I want to raise about five or six points. The first way forward, I think East African states has to accept and recognize internal challenges first. So the solution has to begin by recognizing that the problem that we are struggling with. So we have to recognize it, and we have to begin the solution by ourselves. In this case, we may do the following things, like dealing with divisive tendencies, improving state capacity and regulate mining and economic activities, and developing culture of tolerance against radicalism. My second set of recommendation is about charting new modality for cooperation amongst regional states. In Africa, we have a good experience of political willingness to create an African unity or an African sort of unity in 2063 and something like that. But apart from those political commitments, my suggestion is that we need to also work on cooperation on specific activities. It can be on intelligence cooperation for shared challenges. It can be military cooperation for peacekeeping, peace building, and something like that. It can be police cooperation for organized and transboundary crimes. And it can be standing together in the fight against terrorism. So we need to have very specialized type of cooperation amongst ourselves. And the fourth recommendation is refraining from hosting, supporting, and supplying arms to the opposition of another country. My fifth recommendation is about institutionalizing cooperation. Of course, we have lots of institutions like IGAD, EAC, and something like that. On one side, we have to revitalize existing institutions. On the other side, we have to also think about establishing new cooperation schemes, like it can be custom cooperation, telecom cooperation, electricity, railway, supply chain control, water management. It's when we cooperate on those functional areas that we can achieve regional integration. And my last point is about compliance to AU visions and aspirations, like for Agenda 2063 and FCFTA. For this, states has to allocate adequate amount of budget for connecting national capitals. Again, they have to give political commitment for removing trade barriers, and we have to apply African solution to African problem. My last point is that no savior shall come from abroad. The solution is in our hand. Thank you very much.
So my presentation today would be on the legacy of psychological warfare in Africa, so particularly focusing on the historical and strategic analysis of foreign psychological operations on the African continent. So simply put, psychological warfare refers to the strategic use of psychological tactics to influence, intimidate, demoralize, or manipulate the thoughts and behaviors of individuals, groups, or nations, typically in military or political context. And the goal is to gain a strategic advantage without necessarily engaging in physical combat by solidifying dominance in the information domain, creating decision paralysis on the adversary, and gaining upper hand in the perception management, hence why it's usually referred to as a silent battlefield. So to contextualize this critical subject matter within the African context, Africa's limited cyber infrastructure and technological development has made it more susceptible to psychological operations rather than other forms of digitally or technologically sophisticated psychological warfare, such as cyber warfare or electronic warfare. Thus, when studying psychological warfare in African context, it's imperative to recognize the African continent as a site of PSYOPs, or as a persistent site of PSYOPs, or more particularly as a persistent site of cognitive colonization, where the contest for power transcends physical territory and unfolds within the realm of narrative epistemology and legitimacy. So from the colonial enterprise to the algorithmic age, the modern digital age, Africa has endured successive waves of psychological operations that have insidiously shaped its political and security architectures, cultural identities, and its global representations as well. And in response to that, a growing imperative now emerges, which is the reclamation of narrative sovereignty and the pursuit for psychological self-determination. So to understand that, we have to dive into the theoretical frameworks of this psychological warfare. The first theory is information warfare theory. This theory is grounded in both traditional military and modern theories of war that underscores perception as a terrain of conflict, considering control over narrative as a control of power. Traditional war theorists such as Sun Tzu, Art of War, or Clausewitz theory of war, both of which highlights the psychological elements of warfare and the linkage and respective importance of information and moral. Also, modern concepts of warfare such as PSYOPs, cyber warfare, electronic warfare, propaganda and disinformation, threats and intimidations, and operational security as well highlight the psychological elements of war. One very good example in this regard is the PSYOP Ethiopia was forced to endure during the Tigray War, from travel warnings to the departure of diplomatic officers, from threats and intimidations to actual sanctions. And the number of times Ethiopia's case was presented to the United Nations Security Council, more than 25 times, if I recall right. So Ethiopia has endured much during this period, and the Western mainstream media was at the forefront leading this information warfare against an African country. So the second theory, which is related to this example as well, is framing and agenda setting theory. Such theories dictate how media and messaging direct attention and shape social priorities. It's about setting the agenda through repeated coverage, thereby framing them in particular interpretations, elevating certain issues over the other by shaping public perception of importance. Another example is how foreign media often disproportionately highlights conflict, poverty, and instability in the African continent, relegating innovation, peaceful resistance movements, and cultural agency to the margins. Say, for instance, a violent riot in the streets of Paris, France, and a relatively peaceful opposition rally in one of the African cities are usually reported in a completely opposing manner to what has actually happened. I also recall how the Ethiopian famine has been framed to redefine Ethiopia as a symbol of poverty and hunger, overshadowing its ancient glory and modern global stature. So this gives global perception and policy priorities toward this paternalism and crisis response. So the other theory is behavioral economics. From the perspective of psychological warfare, this theory is about the disruption of rational decision-making through fear, tribalism, identity priming, misinformation, and cognitive overload by deliberately exploiting psychological vulnerabilities to distort perception, fragment social cohesion, and manipulate public behavior. You can see how Africans have been programmed to overemphasize about ethnic identity, ethnic rivalries, and religious fault lines instead of the quality of healthcare, education, affordable housing, national security matters, and other important national and regional matters. So the fourth theory, which is the most interesting theory when it comes to studying psychological warfare in Africa is a post-colonial theory. This theory interrogates the lingering effects of colonial domination on the cultural, psychological, and epistemological life of formerly colonized societies. It highlights epistemic violence and the construction of the African other as a systemic devaluation, suppression, and erasure of indigenous African knowledge systems, modes of being, and ways of knowing through the imposition of dominant Western frameworks of knowledge. So in Africa, colonial education systems were influenced by missionary pedagogy and Orientalist scholarship, collectively redefining the continent as a historical, irrational, and in need of external salvation. Through literature, anthropology, media, and policy, Africa has been constructed as the archetypical other, the dark, chaotic, uncivilized foil to the rational modern West. AI-driven propaganda, soft power, projections, cultural warfare through movies, music industry, and so forth is also another platform of psychological warfare in the 21st century. So what are the impacts of such psyops in Africa? There are various impacts, but to be precise, the first one is socioeconomic consequences, which is the ethnic and social division, diversion from development priorities, like by hijacking public attention, redirecting focus from urgent development goals such as poverty alleviation, healthcare, and education, thereby slowing progress and widening inequality. Also, misinformation eroding investor confidence, disrupting market systems, and destabilizing local economies. And these consequences compound underdevelopment and weak financial resilience. The second is political and security implications, which is delegitimization of governance, destabilization of states, and erosion of sovereignty. So disinformation campaigns aimed at political institutions, weakening public trust, inciting arrest, and challenging the legitimacy of African leadership. And in fragile African states, this often escalates to violent protests or coups like we have seen in Sudan, or governance breakdown like we have seen in many African countries. So the psychological consequences, which has been much covered under the post-colonial theory, imposing foreign narratives reshaped African self-perception. A generation of Africans exposed to psychological manipulation have adopted a belief system of Africa as inferior, viewing it as inherently backward and in need of rescue. And the other most interesting consequence, psychological consequence, is the Messiah complex, which is Africa is frequently framed as a problem to be solved rather than a subject of agency or innovation. And these frames are embedded in development discourse, in humanitarian campaigns, in international diplomacy, diminishing Africa's local agency and entrenching dependency narratives as the global north develops the Messiah or the Savior complex. So what shall we do? What is the solution? We have to reclaim the African mind. Reclaiming the African mind is a solution. So how can we reclaim the African mind? So Africa is globally spoken about, rarely speaks for itself. For Africa to reclaim its narrative and cognitive sovereignty, my suggestion would be to develop epistemic sovereignty initiatives, which is establishing Pan-African institutes focused on indigenous knowledge reclamation and critical theory, decolonizing school curricula, education curricula, teach African history from African perspectives, and fund indigenous language publishing, research, and so forth. The second one is investing in cognitive literacy and psychological resilience, institutionalizing and integrating PSYOP studies, media literacy into civic education. The third is reclaiming Africa's storytelling power, narrative sovereignty, establishing centralized Pan-African media and entertainment ecosystem, incentivizing content creation reflecting Africa's multidimensional narratives, realities, training narrative intelligence analysts and PSYOP first responders in civil service, security, and so forth, and strategically mobilize the African diaspora to, through a unified platform to reflect African realities. The third and most important recommendation would be the digital sovereignty and centralized PSYOP defense system. And for this, Africa has to invest in its digital sovereignty, building African-owned platforms, data centers and algorithms, legislating data sovereignty laws that protect African user behavior from foreign intelligence use and enforce existing ones effectively. And the other important one is establishing and operationalizing an African Cyber Psychological Operations Command as a continental cognitive defense alliance, which is a regional, by this I mean a regional coordination body designed to detect, analyze, and counter cognitive infiltration and digital manipulation campaigns. So understanding the urgency of the command center, Africa is a new psychological battleground. The second scramble for Africa is underway, not through overt colonization of the land, but of perception, allegiance, and narrative. So global powers are engaged in systemic influence operations across Africa. PSYOPs are now strategic tools to win access to Africa's resources, markets, votes in multilateral bodies, and military footholds without overt conflict. So Africa risks becoming a passive field of ideological competition unless it actively defends its cognitive space. Without coordinated action, psychological warfare may fragment nations, it might suppress resistance, and erode democratic and other institutions from within. So my conclusion is psychological warfare against Africa has now evolved from pulpits and plumpets and sanctions to flash drives and hashtags. The damage is invisible, but the consequences are visible: interest, identity, and sovereignty. True liberation demands not just political or economic independence, but also mental and narrative emancipation. So to reclaim sovereignty and to remain sovereign, Africa must learn to fight and win the war of perception. It must claim the right to defend itself, to define itself, to defend itself, and to dream itself in its own terms. Thank you.